Look, I didn't want to do this, but now I feel like I have to. Okay, so you've been warned. Okay, so this is going to be something that I haven't actually done before, but I might try to do more of it if anybody actually enjoys this and maybe gets something out of it. So what's happened to me recently is I follow a bunch of accounts on Twitter that are writers, especially indie writers, because there's a pool of writers and indie writers on Twitter. And what's been happening recently is this book has been retweeted and retweeted and retweeted into oblivion, and to the point that it keeps showing up on my feed. Okay, and so I've been mostly ignoring it. There's nothing that a book about an adulterer as the protagonist could do to interest me. And there are a couple of reasons for that. Number one, there's literally no good reason to ever cheat, in my opinion. The whole purpose to hide who you're sleeping with or to cheat on somebody as opposed to just breaking it off is in order to hurt somebody. You're lying. There's no purpose. Just break it the frick off. And like the whole idea of adultery or cheating has never made sense to me because you're clearly unhappy. You're clearly not getting something. And so just do it. It is selfish to be like, well, I don't want to break it off because I don't want to hurt somebody. But meanwhile, you're hiding this whole thing. The saying is, what they don't know won't hurt them. And it is a lie because this will hurt them. When you're cheating, you are more distant from whoever you're cheating on. Okay? And so there is very little just in this type of protagonist that I care about. Number two is that in multiple sessions, talking with agents, usually they mention it in the manner of romance, is you cannot have a protagonist who is a cheater in romance because you will never get the reader on your side. And in general, it just seems like the opportunity, it just seems like the role of the adulterer is always harder to get the reader on their side, even if it's not in romance. I'm not saying that you can't do it, but it does feel harder to get people to care about an adulterer as opposed to a murderer, at least in my case. And I know that's kind of weird, but let me know what you think. And I just mean feeling sympathetic for that character or wanting to see why. Because there really are not that many. I feel like part of it is because there really aren't that many reasons why somebody would cheat or why they would hide or why they would adulter. That's not saying every situation with an adulterer is that, but the majority, it seems, is just that. And it's not more complicated, like they're a sex addict and they can't stop themselves and you're watching them fall and everything around them is failing and they don't mean to cheat, but they are. This is not that situation, mind you, but that would be easier to get behind than somebody who just cheats because they're not finding something in their relationship and they won't break off their relationship because they think they're lucky to have that person, but they're also not getting something that they want in that relationship. I'll get into that. So I saw this popping up all over my Twitter all the time from certain people retweeting it for some reason, and I usually ignored it, but I got really tired of it showing up and I clicked it. It also showed in the tweet a display of kind of this page showing that it had a bunch of 5-star reviews, and as you can see, it says 5-star reviews here. I did want to scroll down to see what people were talking about. And you got, here's the plot synopsis. Lee loves his wife. In fact, he's in love and in lust with her. However, when it comes to intimacy and any kind of emotional connection, Tamsin responds to Lee with pretty goddamn good impression of a glacier, which that really doesn't show in what I have read. It's easy to understand Lee's need for sexual intimacy and some kind of pleasure of the flesh. Poor dude doesn't really want to have an affair, but a work colleague, Sophia, starts giving him the come on, which you'll see is also him coming on to her. It's not a one-way thing, mind you. And you're not in love and in lust with your wife if you're not even making passes at your wife. Lee isn't interested at first, but Sophia slowly wears him down. Lee decides he's going to have an affair and goes online to research. He comes up with 15 rules and Sophia accepts them. Soon, Lee and Sophia are having the knock-me-down, sweaty, feral sex. And of course, Tasman gets suspicious. He tries to break off the affair with Sophia, and Sophia is soon channeling her inner Glenn Close in Fatal Attraction. So this is like a romance thriller. With that basic synopsis, what I'm going to do is read some of the pages from the look inside and let you know my responses to them or why it reads so poorly, and hopefully there will be something to take away from this. Without further ado, The Adulterer's Handbook by Sam Anthony. And of course, it starts with a prologue. Everybody, for some reason, likes prologues, but a lot of people don't know how to freaking use prologues, okay? Let's get into this. I raised my hands to her shoulders and give her a hard shove. She stumbles away from me until her heel catches on a root. She stumbles away from me until her heel catches on a tree root and she falls backwards, arms windmilling toward the setting sun. "Lee!" she shouts before there's a spectacular splash and she disappears beneath the green, frothing water. My first thought is, she won't be happy about me ruining her new dress. My second thought is, I hope she doesn't swallow any of that slimy, foul-smelling canal water. In a moment of panic, one thought comes to the fore. She can't swim. Am I going to have to jump in and rescue her? I don't mind my jeans getting wet, but I'm wearing my favorite shirt. Have I got time to strip off? That's a weird way to say it. Then, to my great relief, she comes coughing and spluttering to the surface. I expect to receive an earful of fully justified abuse, but to my surprise, after some ineffectual splashing, she disappears beneath the surface again. The water quickly stills above her. She genuinely can't swim. I'm about to jump into the canal and pull her to safety when I stop at the edge of the towpath. What if I did nothing? According to Reader's Digest, a prologue is used when material that you want to include in the opening is out of time sequence with the rest of the story. For example, let's say you're writing a book about a woman getting married. While your story focuses on the year leading up to the big day, there's a funny anecdote from her childhood about her idea of the perfect wedding that foreshadows the actual event. Because this section is seen from her perspective as a child, it's out of sequence with the rest of the book, which is shown from an adult's perspective and might work better as a prologue. You can use a prologue in fiction and nonfiction, but it is used only to explain key information that doesn't follow the time flow of the rest of your book. So if your prologue doesn't fit this criteria, either cut it or change it to chapter 1. And so this prologue feels a lot to me very similar to the way that Twilight used the prologue, which is here is kind of a high stress situation that maybe appears later in the book that I want to whet your appetite with. So you go, ooh, how did this come to be? You know, it's kind of like when you start The Emperor's New Groove and you've got Kuzco as a llama crying in the rain, and then he cuts in, oh, I bet you're wondering, yeah, that's me. Yeah, that's me. And you want to know how this happened, blah, 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 blah. And it feels like it's often used in novels to do the same thing, but it's always with something creepy that's happening or something dangerous that's happening or the main character is doing something uncouth. And so that's what you see here is the main character is letting somebody die, and it could be his wife or it could be his mistress. We don't know. All we know when we're starting this book is that he's going to have a wife and a mistress, and he's cheating on his wife, so this could be his wife. But since it's a thriller, it could also be him fighting off his mistress at the end. I don't know, and that's probably what it's trying to get you to think about is, oh, who is he killing? Now, see, an extra problem here with doing a prologue like this, at least in my opinion, is we're already set up to not like this character because he's a cheater. So now we're also starting this book off with even less empathy and interest in this man because he's killing somebody. He's killing some woman that trusted him because he's obviously in a relationship. She's got a new fancy dress. He's taken her to some event. So she's somebody important in his life, and he is basically letting her die and or being an accessory to her death. So we have no reason to like this character at all. He's not even good at killing her because he's not killing her. If you start out a story like Dexter, you see Dexter doing something, well, you can at least watch and be intrigued by the masterfulness in what he's doing because he's got his hands all over that project. But in this, Leah's just watching somebody die. He's not adding anything. So I usually hate these kinds of prologues. It's really cheap, and it's meant to just throw you into a high-tension moment. And I think that's supposed to make you ask questions and to draw you in, but for me, it just doesn't. I don't care about this character, and I like him even less. And again, I'm upfront with my bias against cheaters, but not a good start. So then let's go to chapter 1. No, 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 no. I realized my mistake milliseconds after pressing the little arrow icon. I just sent the text message. That was incredible. God, you're so hot, XXX, to my wife instead of my lover. The traffic lights turn green and I drive away, searching for somewhere to park so I can figure out if I can remedy the situation. I turn into a side street and pull over. How did this happen? I'm always so careful. That will teach me not to send messages while I'm driving. I pick up my phone, type in the 6-digit passcode, and study the screen. 2 gray ticks. My wife's phone has received it, but she hasn't read it yet. Sometimes she doesn't look at my messages for hours. Perhaps there's a way that I can delete it from her phone before she even notices that Perhaps there's a way I can delete it from her phone before she even notices. I feel sick and I'm sweating. What am I going to say if she reads it? Okay. So first, that first paragraph, the no, I realize my mistakes milliseconds after pressing the arrow key, it just sounds melodramatically over the top. It doesn't really set the scene. It's so, like, the text message itself is so specific on purpose to make it messed up for somebody who's supposed to be cheating, and we'll talk about this later on when we get to where he mentions the rules. I also have a difficult time with this passage because he says, I was being so careful while also texting while he's driving. No, you're not being careful. If you were being careful, you wouldn't be texting something that's specifically dangerous to you while also sitting in traffic because you know you're not paying full attention to your phone. So, no, the narrative is lying to me, and I hate this character more because he's flat out lying to me. So now we got a cheater. He lies to his wife and to the reader, and he kills somebody later, or attempts to kill somebody. We don't know if she actually dies. And then we've got this nice little time skipper here, because you're going to notice that this is all broken out into little tiny sections, and I don't like that. I think it breaks up the flow. But moving on. For the last 7 weeks, I've been having an affair with Sophia from my office. Over the course of a couple of years, we'd gradually made the transition from colleagues to friends, and we increasingly used to spend our downtime together. She made me laugh, made me think, and took an interest in me. I came to really enjoy her company. It didn't hurt that she was also very easy on the eyes. We flirted a bit, initially by email and then in person. One evening at the tail end of summer, after working late to finish an important project, as we and a colleague made our way to the staff car park along a particularly dark section of the footpath, I reached out and surreptitiously squeezed Sophia's bottom. I still don't understand the strange compulsion that made me do it. What an impetuous thing to do. That's because you're a lech. Just be honest. I had no idea how she'd react. A slap in the face would have been justified. So what kind of relationship do you even have? Or she could have made a scene in front of our colleague and humiliated me. She did neither. Without breaking stride, Sophia maintained the conversation with Claire from the IT department. It was as if it had never happened. I started to believe that she hadn't even noticed. So number one, and this is just more of a structural thing, about in the middle of this paragraph, it's talking about walking to the park with a colleague. That's where it should have mentioned Claire from IT, not further down. Because if you're going to mention who it is specifically, bring it in earlier. So I don't really understand why it said we and a colleague instead of we and Claire from IT were walking to the car park. That would have made more sense. And then you can just say Claire again later, and it's more natural. Number two, let's talk about this relationship between him and Sophia. So he grabbed her bottom suddenly after the end of some office party. Now, if you're going to grab somebody's bottom, especially at work, hello, sexual harassment department, you're going to have received some kind of signals that you're kind of being, they're being flirty. They probably have exchanged some more questionable text messages that would make him believe that that would be okay and would not actually get him in trouble. So the fact that he doesn't know how she would respond either means that she never sent him any signals over the last couple of years where they have been flirting, and especially not over the last however many weeks or months it's been since before they started an affair where things started to get more physical, or she never sent literally any signals, which doesn't make any sense because they've been flirting. So this really doesn't make any sense to me. He has really no reason to assume that she would slap him unless he was the one making the first move. But again, so let's go down to that review. Let's recall that review that we read earlier where it says that Sophia started the flirting and Lee was reluctant to do it. Yet here he is making the first move by grabbing her butt. So either that reviewer is misrepresenting this character's personality to try to make them look better, or what? So I like this even less now. I like this guy even less now. Continuing, we got some more dots. And we're time skipping again. It's my own fault. Always begin text messages with hi. It's a security feature of our carefully regulated affair to make sure it's safe to communicate and hence to prevent situations like this from occurring. I'm an idiot. Okay, so in the first paragraph where we're not in the, or second paragraph, whatever, in the first group of text where we're not in the prologue, he says, I'm always so careful. How could this happen? And then we get to this third paragraph that's technically in the same timeline, and he says he has well-regulated rules. Dude, he just broke his own rules, and he says they're well-regulated. He came up with the rules. If you read that review, it says that he came up with the rules. Sophia agreed. So he doesn't actually stick to the rules. How many other rules has he broken? Because now we can see that he doesn't stick to his own rules. And he's not actually careful. It's a security measure. Yeah, well, if this is how well you keep security, I'm sure your wife already knows that you're cheating, hun. 2 blue ticks. Tamsin has seen it. My heart sinks. What must she be thinking now? I picture her in a flood of tears, staring at her phone as her world crashes down around her. There's no reply yet. Is she already throwing my clothes onto the front lawn and lighting a match? I couldn't blame her if she is. A response at last. A single symbol. Question mark? I don't like the switching back and forth either, because part of this, so switching this back and forth, we're one in the beginning of the book. So you should be establishing the momentum for the story. You should be establishing the character, and you should be establishing what the character wants, and even if it's a short-term want, and what stands in their way if they don't get it. But right now, instead, what we're doing is we're alternating between exposition and what's currently happening, and that's killing the forward momentum of the story. Since I also don't care about this character, I don't really care how he started having an affair with Sophia, because I don't like him and he's not very good at it. Again, so what I mentioned before, and I'll mention it a little clearer now, is so your main character doesn't actually have to be likable. You can have a terrible person be your protagonist. There are lots of stories like that. However, if your main character is a terrible person, they have to get the audience on their side some other way. And that means one of the ways to do that is through making them really good at what they do. Yet, he's not even good at cheating, okay? In the first paragraph, the first sentence of this story, he was failing at whatever it is this book is supposed to, whatever this book is highlighting of him. So he's a terrible character, and I hate him. The momentum is stop and go, so you get a lot of... That is how it's reading. With all of these time skips, you don't get a chance to kind of just ease in, learn the character, and then start seeing what's going on. It's exposition, failure, exposition, failure, exposition, failure, and exposition where he's a bad person. The following day at work, Sophia was still behaving as if nothing had happened. Fine by me. I'd regretted grabbing her bottom the moment I'd done it, and I was happy to forget all about the whole incident. However, she approached me mid-morning after being out of the office for a while, an expression of suppressed anger on her face. I've just been with HR, she said. I've reported you for sexual harassment, and they want to see you in their office now. I couldn't believe what I'd heard. I'm so sorry, Soph. I didn't know why I did it. Well, I do, she replied, her eyes steely. I have an irresistible arse. It's always been a problem. She burst out laughing. I'd never seen her so joyful. Your face is priceless, she gasped, trying to catch her breath as she sashayed back to her office. I'm just going to say I don't really know people that sashay around the office, but okay. What should I do? Reply right away, think fast, and try to come up with an old excuse on the spur of the moment, or take my time and make sure I've got a fool's-proof reason why I've just sent a hugely suspicious text message to my wife. She, too, must have seen the 2 blue ticks, so she knows that I've read her messages. I have to reply at once. I wing it. Maybe it's just me, but for some reason I feel like Tamsin is not really technologically literate and doesn't really hang on her phone as much as this guy does. But maybe that's because, one, he's said that she doesn't check her phone sometimes for hours, and 2, he's the one having an affair, so he would be more glued to his phone. But I don't get the feeling that he's as obsessed as she is, but he's obviously kind of paranoid because he's doing something wrong. Haha, sorry about that. Colleague Dave got a hold of my phone and thought that it would be funny to send you a dodgy message. 2 gray ticks, 2 blue ticks, no reply. Minutes pass, I wait. So just a quick note on this with unrealistic dialogue. If you've been married for years, and you've probably talked about work people before, and you've probably brought your spouse to work events before, you really wouldn't say colleague Dave. I imagine that Tamsin is familiar with Dave-ish. At this point, I imagine that his wife is familiar-ish with his coworkers and who is in the area, and that he's supposed to be at work. And so he would say, Dave got a hold of my phone. I don't really know if anybody refers to their coworkers as colleague whoever when they're describing them to their significant other, but this person is from the UK. So, I mean, if you're from the UK, you can tell me if that's part of your guys' normal dialectics. And we got some more dots. Time for some introspection, you guys. My wife is called Tamsin, and she's wonderful. I fell in love with her the moment I met her at university, and I love her more with each passing year. If loving her more each passing year equals cheating on her when in the beginning you weren't, I don't want to see what renewed vows looks like. She's beautiful, kind, wise, classy, and very, very sexy. Slightly on the skinny side, a slim, she looks incredible, clothed and naked. I've never met anyone who I find more alluring than her, so why am I having an affair? I've considered this a great deal. Is there something missing from our relationship that I can only obtain elsewhere? Not really. Tasman is my dream woman. Okay, so if you're not missing anything from your relationship, thus why you're going somewhere else for it, then what are you doing? Like, I could get it if I could get you saying that if you were having a ton of sex with your wife, but then you're like, you know, I'm kind of just a psychopath, so I'm gonna go bang other people while also banging my wife. I'm not missing anything, but you know, I just want to see if I can get away with it. So why not? And then I get it. Further down, if you remember in that review, it said that his wife did an impression of a glacier, which would mean that she's cold. This also sort of implies that he's not getting sex from her, and so then that would make the reason why he's having an affair because he's not getting some sexual attention from his wife, which means, yes, there is something that he's not getting, and again, he's lying. But we don't know this character well enough other than the fact that he's a liar. Tasman is my dream woman. I fancy the pants off her. She's my best friend. We share many of the same likes and dislikes. She's great company and thoroughly enjoy spending quality time together. We both appreciate fine dining and regularly go out for romantic meals. We behave like newlyweds on our summer vacations, which Tamsin meticulously researches and organizes. I'd hate to do anything to hurt her. So why am I cheating on her when I'm fully cognizant of how devastated she'd be if she knew? For the next few days, Sophia teased me meticulously about being able to resist her bottom. However, our relationship continued to be professional and above board, with just some occasional flirting. That is, until my birthday. At the close of business, once most of the staff had left the building, I popped into Sophia's office, as I'd begun to do several times a day. We often spent our break times together and took the opportunity to gossip about and affectionately ridicule our coworkers. It was a pleasant way to spend time, and I found I was enjoying being with Sophia more and more. In fact, I seemed to be thinking about her more than any married man should. On this particular day, my 45th birthday, as I said goodbye, Sophia stood up from behind her desk, came forward, stretched up into her tippy toes, kissed me softly on the lips, and said happy birthday in a soft, breathy voice I hadn't heard her use before. I was taken aback. It was so intimate. I'd imagined what it would be like to kiss her, but it had actually happened, and it was lovely. She stood there, inches away, looking me in the eye and waiting for a response. There was nobody else around, so I decided to push my luck. Any chance of a hug? Sophia didn't hesitate. How is asking for a hug after getting a kiss pushing your luck? She put her arms around my neck, pressed her body against mine, and relaxed into me. My arms went around her waist, and I squeezed her gently, and she squeezed back, and it felt perfect. I wanted it to go on forever, but we heard voices outside in the corridor, and we leapt apart. See you tomorrow. She waved, her eyes now on her computer screen, as two people walked past the office. See ya, I replied as I left the room, walking on air. There's no response from Tamsin for 12 minutes. Does she believe my feeble excuse? It's plausible. Eventually, I get one word reply. Hilarious. I could almost see the sarcasm dripping off my phone screen. This is immediately followed by, we need to talk when you get home. I should mention at this point that I'm heavily editing and reconstructing my wife's text messages so that they make sense. She types fast and never reads them before sending. They're often indecipherable and sometimes highly humorous. This one I don't find funny at all, and I'm already dreading returning home. I don't think anybody ever takes, honey, we need to talk, as a joke or humorous. I think that's one of the worst phrases most people feel like can come at them. If your significant other or your parent says, we need to talk when you get home, somebody's in trouble. Most of the time. For the next couple of weeks, my relationship with Sophia continued much as before, except our eyes seemed to meet more often in staff meetings, and we'd taken to hugging goodbye before we left for home at the end of each day, obviously only after we checked that nobody could see us. This rapidly became the highlight of my day. Sophia felt so good in my arms that I was always reluctant to stop, and these hugs became longer and longer. Increasingly, we only ended our embrace when we heard voices or footsteps in the corridor outside the room. Nothing was said, but it was obvious to both of us that something was happening between us that we wanted to keep a secret. How long can you maintain a hug before it starts to feel weird? Quite a while, apparently. Several times I thought these hugs were about to lead to kissing, but they never did, until the evening of the puncture. So he's already like on page 1 or page 2, he was like, I love my wife more than anything. She's the best thing in my life. And already he's said he looked forward to the end of the day to hug this woman instead of, the end of the day to go home to his wife, which means that his wife is not his favorite thing in the world. So, one thing to pay attention to in this is that it is in first person, and it sounds like the narrator is unreliable. He's not going to call himself trashy because he really doesn't think he's doing anything wrong. However, as a reader, this guy is a piece of trash. And I don't say that about real people. But this guy is a jerk. And he's cool with being a jerk. And if this becomes a psychological thriller where this guy is put in a compromising position by his mistress who wants to break up his relationship because she wants him to divorce his wife, I can't feel bad for him if she goes psycho on him because he is a bad person. There's nothing likable about this man. There's nothing that makes him sympathetic. There's nothing that makes me interested in him. So far, he's a crappy liar. He's a crappy person. He's a crappy husband. And none of this character building when we got this exposition that's between these two people is making his situation any better on himself. I drive home paying little attention to the traffic. This isn't going to be any fun. I don't think Tamsin has bought my story. When I walk through the front door, she's coming out of the kitchen. She must have seen my car arrive and is eager to talk without delay. With a sideways motion of her head, she summons me upstairs. I guess she wants privacy. I can hear the kids monopolizing the kitchen, arguing over which songs to play while they're doing their homework. Look, your wife is like, honey, we need to talk. After you sent a really questionable text message where she could assume that you were cheating, of course she wants privacy. What is wrong with you? Yeah, let's just talk about how I'm possibly cheating on you in front of the kids. Yeah, it only makes sense. Tamsin does not seem happy, but she's a long way from furious. This is a good sign for me. I hate it when people do this affirmative thing in the narration. Somebody says something. Oh, that's true. Somebody says something. Oh, they're lying. It's actually like this. I don't need your affirmations. Please, please. I'd place her mood somewhere between anxious and stressed. The signs are apparent. The worm-like swollen veins in her otherwise elegant neck and her hands balled into fists, but her face is nowhere near the purple shade which signifies an imminent eruption. How often does she get so angry that she turns purple? Holy crap. To be fair to Tamsin, she rarely blows her top, but when she does, it's spectacular. But apparently she turns purple every time she blows her top. I close the bedroom door behind us and sit on the bed, dreading the first words out of her mouth. Your bloody mother is now saying she can't make it for Christmas, she says, barely containing her anger. What? What's she talking about? She phoned earlier to say that she and Greg are going to holiday in Spain this year. She mimes air quotes as she rants. All those vegan recipes I've been looking at? What a waste of time. The kids are going to be gutted. I'm wondering how close these people actually are, if the family is just like, yeah, we're just going to go to Spain this year. So the kids are really going to care? Do they really? Tamsin goes on, but I'm no longer listening. Have I got away with it? Has this new crisis suspended mine and caused her to forget that I'm supposed to be in the doghouse? I make noises of agreement, disappointment, and annoyance at the appropriate times as she continues to vent. But after a while, she begins to calm down and I tune in again. See, look, going back to that review, it said that she is the glacier to him. He's tuning out and not listening to his wife. I mean, I get that she's ranting and that she's angry, but he's obviously also not there for his wife. So he's emotionally distant. He is interpersonally distant because he doesn't care about whatever his wife is freaking out about. He's just like, yep, aw, that sucks, aw. But who cares what she's actually saying? So I would say he is the iceberg, not his wife. And it's making now the reviewer look like they are justifying Lee's behavior. Well, at least we should score some devoted family points for inviting them, but a bit more warning would have been useful. I'm wondering how close this is to the holidays that she's actually this pissed off about it. Is it actually December? See, that's something that I would have added to this, because we don't know when this takes place. So if this is taking place in Christmas, well, she could have said, a bit more warning could have been useful. Christmas is in freaking 2 weeks. And she could have added, I've already gotten the guest room ready. I told the kids, and we've got these tickets for these things to do when they're here. But no. So, having a little bit of something there to let us know just how close this is. Because honestly, with the prologue, I imagine this being at some earlier time of the year. I concur, and Tamsin opens the door and starts to make her way out of the bedroom. As I'm beginning to let out a huge sigh of relief, she turns back to me. By the way, what was with that weird text message? I don't think you've mentioned Dave before. Is he new? She asks. Not especially. He's been with us for a couple of years, considers himself to be a bit of a prankster. I can't look at her in the eye. See, if he's been there for a couple of years, I find it kind of hard to imagine that she doesn't know Dave. She could say, I don't know. I just think that that's weird. And or he apparently never takes her to work events, apparently. Well, I'll be giving him a piece of my mind at your office Christmas party. See, and then that implies that she goes to the office Christmas parties. So she must have been introduced to Dave at some point. Tamsin turns and walks away. As she stomps back down the stairs, I decide to postpone my sigh of relief. Nobody stomps down the stairs, okay? It's comedic. It's literally comedic to hear somebody go and imagine them walking down the stairs. Tamsin and I have 2 children. Charlie is 14, witty, confident, and as beautiful as her mother. John is 11, tall for his age and too young to be as studious as he is. They're both addicted to their gadgets and seem to spend less and less time with their parents, to our dismay, but they're still great kids. I may be biased, but I believe we make a wonderful family, and only an idiot would do anything to jeopardize what we have. An idiot like me. However, I'm determined not to end up divorced and full of regret like my parents. I guess I'd better not get caught. Look, if you really wanted to not end up like your parents, you wouldn't be cheating, okay? You're a selfish person. You're not a better person because, if I don't get caught, then I'm not going to be divorced like my loser parents. No, you're going to get caught. You're going to get divorced, and you're going to ruin the family because apparently you couldn't keep it in your pants and work out whatever problem you're having with your wife. Sophia is 35 and has an amazing figure, somewhere between slim and voluptuous. She's undoubtedly curvier than my wife, but not as tall. The perfect hugging height. Her husband is a lucky man. Oh yes, did I mention that she's married too? They have no children yet, but they're contemplating starting a family soon. Oh great, both of the main characters are sucky people. Congratulations! 8 weeks before Christmas, as I was completing a task at work, shortly after hugging Sophia goodbye and coming perilously close to kissing her again, my phone vibrated in my pocket. Why is that whole paragraph one sentence? That needs to be edited. Number 2, this time skipping just got really weird. So before, we were time skipping backwards into the start of their relationship. Now, in this last scene, we had the wife complaining that Christmas was coming up. And so now the time skip is at Christmas. I have no idea what any of the timeline is for any of this stuff. I've got a puncture, Sophia texted. Sophia is the best text message writer I've ever met. She produces perfectly constructed, precise messages and even uses correct formal punctuation. She'd only made it half a mile home before her car had begun to weave erratically across the road and she'd been forced to pull over onto the lay-by. On reflection, this was the first text message we'd ever exchanged, and it began a whole new era of our developing relationship. You okay? I replied, yeah, I'm fine, but I need a big, manly man to help me. This was followed by, I immediately thought of you. And then, do you know any big, manly men? Funny. Have you tried the AA or RAC? I responded, chuckling to myself, not a member, accompanied by a sad face emoji. What about your husband? Can't he help? He's away at the moment, and to be honest, he's useless at mechanical stuff and many other things. I don't know why there's not a winky face there. Where are you? I asked. You go winky face, eggplant. Come on, we already know Sophia's a hoe. Sophia sent me her location, and I set off to assist her, the way any colleague would under the same circumstances. Don't even pretend that you're just colleagues, because you've already said that you're past colleagues, and now you're friends, and you flirted. So this, going back to as any colleague would, no, that should be as any friend would, because you've already said that you've evolved from being colleagues to being friends. At the very least. Well, it looks as if I've got a temporary reprieve. Tamsin appears to believe me regarding the prank message, so hopefully I'm off the hook, at least until the office Christmas party, which I'm now dreading. What if she confronts Dave? There's a high likelihood they'll bump into each other at some point during the evening, and the only thing she knows about him is that he's a prankster. I'm afraid I have no idea what you're talking about, Lee's hot wife. What? Please, call me Tamsin. Okie dokie, Tamsin. You know, a few weeks ago, you sent me a message pretending it was from Lee to be a woman he'd just been having sex with. Something like, that's amazing, God, you're so hot. You must remember. I'm sorry, Tamsin. But that definitely wasn't me. Fair enough, Dave. Want to pop upstairs for a shag? Oh, see, look, so now he's making, in his imagination, his wife a terrible person. He can't even pretend that she's terrible if she bangs his coworker because he's banging his coworker. Come on, Dave. Come on, Lee. Okay, so I have an overactive imagination, and many of my daydreams involve my horny wife having sex with someone else, but I'm already terrified that the conversation will go something like that, except possibly the last bit. So just say that you... Okay, so what I'm getting from this is that he's not getting everything he wants from his wife because he's kind of interested in maybe a polygamous relationship or maybe a swinging relationship of some kind because he's imagining his wife cheating on him, and he could probably get off on that. But he probably hasn't talked to his wife about opening up their relationship because he's afraid, but that's still something that he's obviously interested in. At least that's how this reads. Once Tamsin discovers that my story isn't true, she'll confront me again. What new concoction can I go to next? I could accuse Dave of lying, but why would he do that? I could blame someone else in the office, but Tamsin could easily ask them, a random stranger, but she'd still wonder why I'd accuse Dave in the first place. I can't see a way out of it, and I'm coming up with increasingly desperate ideas, which eventually I whittle down to just two. Tell Dave what I've done man to man and hope he'll back me up, or murder Dave. And that's the end of chapter 1, and that's as far as we're going to go into this. I sometimes do this thing where it's the first chapter review, and if I would continue reading after the first chapter, and based on this, no. A lot of this exposition type stuff or narration type stuff that you see right here is the author writing specifically to counter plot holes that they are aware of. So he's reasoning through the plot holes where the reader might go, well, what if this happens? Well, why won't this happen? And so he's presenting it in order to answer it so that you don't feel like he's allowing plot holes to happen. However, instead of actually making it more realistic and believable, he's hurting himself by doing this. Again, we're slowing down the plot because this is not actually action that's moving the plot forward. It's stuck in his head. It's exposition. It's narration. It's not moving anything. It doesn't help you get to know the character at all. It is just the writer justifying their actions. So hopefully you don't question the story. Based on the rest of this, it doesn't seem like the author knows very much about interpersonal relationships because Lee's relationship with Sophia doesn't sound like it works. Lee also was the one that made the first move by grabbing the woman's butt, because she should have grabbed his butt if she was the one that was initiating, since we didn't see any of the relationship building in the flirting text messages. Their relationship is also very weak. I don't believe it, and I don't care for it, and I don't like it. I don't feel anything for their relationship, but these are slimy people because you don't actually get to see their relationship happen. You don't really get to see them flirt. You get the one thing where he grabs her butt and then it is gone. Like, you don't ever see the emails, you don't ever see the text messages, you don't ever see them actually interacting with those sneaky moments, their hands touching them, trying to get those quick looks. It just tells you that it happens, but you don't get to experience it, which means if you're not experiencing the action in real time, you don't get the chance to emotionally connect with the characters. All of this is telling, especially when it's doing exposition to tell you about the relationship. And that probably hurts this more than him being a terrible person, because not only is he a terrible person, but it also keeps you at a distance in introducing these characters, since you don't get to be with them when they're doing something. If you want to check out this book, I've linked it in the description below. There's a second chapter that's all available for the look inside if you want to see more about it. I felt the need to talk about this book, not because I'm particularly interested in it, and I don't go looking for books that I can critique and just talk about the problems I see with them. Every movie that gets put out gets to be critiqued. Every song that gets put out gets to be critiqued, and I don't know why we don't critique books. This is just not good. But let me know what you think in the comments down below. Does this type of story interest you? It kind of is the opposite of a Lifetime story, where in Lifetime stories, the sympathetic person is usually the one getting cheated on, and then the lady kills the cheater. Role reversal and breaking expectations is not always the best route to go. But let me know what you think in the comments down below. Does this type of story interest you? Would you read further? Did you see any other things that you might have had a problem with, or that you actually liked from the sections that I read? I look forward to hearing from you. Talk to you next time.